Good morning. My name is Carol Embry. I retired as Deputy Superintendent of Operations in the Springfield School District in 2021. And I currently have a consulting business and provide supports through that to Missouri Public Education still. And I'm super delighted to be here today to provide a substitute version of a Tight Times Tuesday presentation. I am giving you information on the work that no one wants to do and sharing with you what I learned leading a 10% budget reduction process many, many, many years ago. Okay. So the goal of the session is to pause for a moment and review some of the resources that have been previously shared, give you that update about my 2008 experience, and then provide a budget reduction framework that you might find beneficial as you are embracing the work ahead. And I'll unpack lessons learned along the way. So I included this slide because I wanted everyone to understand the treasure trove of information that's already available on the Missouri Association of School Administrator website under the Tight Times Tuesdays page. These are links actually that provide you not only executive summaries, but messaging ideas, an actual community presentation you could use, and facilitation worksheets. So as we get into designing what might work in your community, we want you to just be reminded of those resources. You can watch previous videos, you can access documents that Dr. Jim Cummins has provided as he has delivered the wonderful messages of the past weeks. And there's the link to that Tight Times Tuesday. So diving into my 2008 experience, I'll set the stage for you and tell you that I'd been working in the district, but had been recently promoted to Chief Financial Officer, and that was in July of '07. And one of the first things that I did was start taking a look at the long-term trajectory of our finances in the district. And I knew that we were headed for challenging circumstances because the district had just borrowed money. They mortgaged a middle-level building on a 20-year note through a lease purchase to borrow money that basically was to shore up a large chunk of operating funds where the revenue was falling short for that coming year,
Hey, what's going on?
and also to support capital expenditures. So
Yep.
uh, we knew that that was not a good place to be in, that we were
Yeah.
headed for a long-term place. So all that to say, and I'll pause and say, if you're not muted, if you would please do that. Thank you. All that to say, that was on the front end of what became what we refer to as the economic downturn. And that was in the fall of 2008. And so the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funding was signed into law February 2009. So those of you that have been around for a bit, you recall that likely. And just know
Yeah.
that the stimulus funds that we were to receive would not cover the
Right.
gap that we had moving forward. And so we had identified originally that we needed a 10% cut to the operating budget, and that was $12 million in that district. We provided a communication to our community and to our staff and teachers and administrators. And basically, it was a statement from the superintendent, and it identified the causes of the district's financial challenges. And one of the causes, which again, it's interesting how everything cycles around in life, right? External factors, the new state formula was less generous to the district than it had been in the past. And we had limited increases in assessed valuation, which resulted in slow tax revenue growth. We were primarily a bedroom community. We didn't have robust commercial property to rely upon, and we had a lot of people moving in. And so costs kept going up, but we then needed the state to kick in. We also had internal factors, though, recommendations of administrators from the past and decisions by the board then had been made for recurring costs that were absolutely not sustainable. And anyone who was around the district knows what I'm referring to. Major increases were made to the teacher salary schedule in particular. And while we all know teachers deserve every penny that they earn, it was just something that we could not do financially. So So again, that statement was provided internally and externally to provide not only the reasons for the situation, but to identify the timeline and the immediate specific next steps. So this is a summary actually of the timeline that was produced at that time, and we absolutely had to move quickly and affect the change that was needed. And so this was a robust timeline. You will see that it doesn't include references to major community forum meetings, and that's the kind of thing I'll talk with you about. But what it showed you is that we developed the list, and by October, we're reviewing the list, and this was administrators. We engaged with multiple different administrators in different settings. We separated out elementary, secondary, and department leaders. And we worked on developing that list. We made a recommendation to the board by December for board vote by January. And we did that mostly with our people in mind. And I'll comment about that soon. So I included this slide because it's very critical that as you work through this budget reduction process by forming this group, whatever size that might be in your district, I realize that there are people from very small districts. And when I say we and refer to the cabinet, maybe it's one person. But however your structure is, whatever you need to do, you absolutely must run a simultaneous project, and that is a project that I'm calling communication. You cannot over communicate in this situation. But I want you to understand that when we were encountering this, we engaged with legal counsel early on, and we had them create or review everything that we plan to say or distribute. And these two examples that I've posted here are one is a talking points for building principals to address with staff because we wanted tight communication to be provided to everyone, and we wanted them to understand what was coming out publicly. We also had that statement that I referenced previously that went to the community and all of our staff in the district. So I am highlighting again that all these documents will be posted with this particular webinar on the Tight Times Tuesday page of MASA. This is a slide, and I thought I'm putting it in. It's still applicable today. And as you can see, it's very dated at this point. It's from August 2003, and it's credited to Carmen Mariano, who was an administrator in Quincy, Massachusetts, who apparently got to go through budget reductions. And so this was demonstrated to just show what we all know to do, and that's to protect the student core. And that's what we do in all the things that we do in the district. So budget reduction should be no different. We also identified our North Star about honoring those staff and students. So again, reflecting back to the timeline that was put into place, we wanted to honor our people. We did not want to be giving them notification late March or the first week of April that, oh, by the way, you're not going to be renewed. You've done nothing wrong. We have a financial condition. And so getting this out the gate and moving forward quickly was very important to honor our staff serving our students. This is an example of a document that we shared publicly. And as you can see, we summarized the positions. At that point in time, we'd identified 74.875 FTE to help address this major reduction that was underway. And we know when you're talking about a lot of money, and it matters not which district you're in, a small amount of money can still be a lot for your district, and usually it has to come in the form of people. So as you can see, we've broken this down by the categories like the district-wide impact, support, or student, whether it was an administrator, support staff, teacher, and whether it impacted a district-wide education level or elementary or secondary. You can also see at the bottom there that we've added a few notes that we will not be communicating names on a reduction list, positions only. We will provide estimates on their salary and benefits, not specifics. And we shared then the original out the gate identification of what we could reduce, as well as the upcoming recommendation for the next year. We also specifically listed out some capital projects that we were going to defer, and that meant we wouldn't be drawing money out of our operating account to prop up the capital fund. So in order to provide that summary document, this is a snip of the actual document that we worked within. And we actually had a tier one, tier two, tier three that we worked out of. And of course, it's in Excel because why else wouldn't we do it in Excel, right? You can see that we have the alphabetical by order of description is how we sorted it. We identified our future FTE reductions and the estimated dollar reduction. We had a specific column for who would be the communicator for whatever the situation might be. And we listed that area of concern, the position, the education level, and then we had our prioritization column. At one point in time, we had our building administrators or department administrators provide a prioritization from their purview. And at the end of the day, though, it was left on the executive administration. We took that in as feedback. So you can see that I have a recurring reduction, accumulated reduction amount. And then in the description column, we identified some of the specificity and I've removed names of people and that kind of thing. But we also would communicate in this document with one another, like I needed to dig in deeply on something and then populate more information, that kind of thing. So as I reflected back on this experience from long ago and thought through the things that we missed doing that really anyone should do now, I was thinking about how the hardest part was not identifying those things. The hardest part was actually leading people through it. And I thought that was worthy of commenting about in this presentation. So the budget reduction framework for financial sustainability is a white paper, and I'm a huge fan of a white paper. Trap your thoughts, lay out the plan, and then work the plan. And in every white paper I produce, I have a problem statement. I usually have the opportunity or the recommendation, the strategic plan alignment, identifying stakeholder participation, and that timeline or checklist of all the steps you need to take to be successful in delivering the project. And again, I'm providing this document for posting on the Times Tuesdays resource page for all documents. This is a snip from that budget reduction framework. And again, this is a basic timeline for reductions to be affected 2027, 2028. So in May and June is when we really need to be identifying all of the pieces of what we need to communicate with our stakeholder group, the financial reality, our phase one actions recommended, which would be low-hanging fruit that you might capitalize on currently, and then the phase two, which is that bigger discussion where you need to dig in. During July and August should be the deep analysis and opportunity identification piece of the work. And then in September, continue the scenario development. By October, you are narrowing down and examining recommendations. And then November, finalize and make a recommendation to your board and then also share with specifically impacted staff for the board then to approve during the December meeting and then move forward with your official notification. So again, the aggressive timeline honors the staff impacted so that they can start looking for another job. So the budget reduction framework also includes just these four primary categories. I keep harping on the financial reality, but that's a big piece of it to be able to tell your story using data to help you identify what is the right path to take from an elimination perspective, implementing this framework, and then maintaining leadership accountability. And we'll touch on that a little more later. So form your community group now. And I want to share that when I was in the Springfield district, we formed a community group, not for this purpose, but for a facilities master plan project. And we made sure that we involved board officers in endorsing the list of people, but we also made sure that represented all of our community, that it was all high school feeder patterns, that we had elementary, middle, and high school representation, that we had people that had children or grandchildren or no children. We also added people to the table that included those that are not always our fans and might be more critical of the work that we do, because better that, you work through that and iron sharpens iron through the process. We acknowledge that reductions must include core operations in this process and then share the why the situation exists. And so back to that community forum that we ran, we put all the information out. And so administrators didn't lead it, they played a role in it. So we we had identified community people who would be really great at facilitating a conversation. It just kind of sets you off to the side where you are feeding the information, but you're not driving it at that point in time. So, through this process, though, own what you must and attribute credit to external factors where appropriate. So, this shows you an example of an operating fund trajectory. And my message to you is you have to know your line. However, you get there is, you can get there in a variety of ways, but you must know your line. In order to communicate what is ahead, you have to know how your data is going to play out. And so, tell your story and include narrative, but be sure and have some visuals to help people get their head around what you're really talking about here. So as you can see, I have a zero line where this particular district example, they're going to drop below 0%. And we know that you're stressed well before that. And this is the back end of that chart. And so you could take a very simple approach, just narrow it down and lay it out like this, where you can understand each category of what the changes may be from year to year. And then this can then inform all of that information that feeds into the line chart. So using that multi-year view to publicly help people get their head around the situation is very beneficial. I also provide typically a cash flow analysis. And what you do is you just have your bookkeeper or whomever it is on your team that can do this go back and look at data from the prior year. This is representative, kind of a district where it lays out the monthly revenue and the monthly expenditures for each of the months for FY25. And what this demonstrates then is how low your balance gets before you start receiving your primary local tax revenue. And just for your context, while the district ended the year at a 7.03% fund balance percentage, they actually, with that 43,549, were at a 5.57% based on expenditures at that time. So that would have been much lower if we included all expenditures for the year. Clearly share the why and do it now. All stakeholders should know how legislative actions have impacted public education. So if this is the best kept secret in your district, you need to not let that be so. We need to tell the story that state revenue withholdings for FY26, FY27, and beyond are upon us, and we are having to react to that in a very short period of time. We need people to understand that there is a loss of revenue through Senate Bill 190, which is that senior tax credit bill that all of us are being impacted by. We need people to understand the impacts of Senate Bill 3 for those districts, that it is just setting them back on their heels relative to their revenue source. And just an overall understanding of the lack of growth of the formula the past decades. It has not kept up with inflation. It has not kept up with a multitude of measures, and it's not okay. The box, I'm going to read that because it's that important. Limited formula revenue support and decisions by legislators have clearly indicated the expectation to shift public education costs to local resources, meaning our local taxpayers. So your community, your staff, everyone on the team needs to understand this. This is out of our control. So comprehensively, as you bring this group of stakeholders together, share with them the menu of options. So again, administrators should have done their due diligence in identifying all the pieces and slicing and dicing all of that which makes our districts go and all the services that we're providing to students. So break it down into understandable categories, identify all the programs and participation benefits and costs. And that will help dispute their assumptions or perceptions or misperceptions, and we'll settle them down. Now, it's not going to be easy, and some people may take exception to things. And I should add in here that as you journey through this process with whomever is around the table, you need to discern between noise and signal. So noise, you're always going to have noise. There's always going to be a percentage of the group that is not going to be happy with whatever is taking place or have a varying opinion. And you need to sift through that and focus on the signal that's being provided you through the comprehensive team. So this bottom line provides you transparency throughout the communication process, and it sends a clear message that you're not hiding anything and you're not protecting anything. You have nothing to hide, so show it all. I've referred to data a few times, and that is a non-negotiable. You've got to come up with some of your factoids. And I've listed just a few here. Operating fund balance percentage and trend. I showed you those charts. Share in dollars, what 1% of fund balance means, and that it changes every year. How much will a 1 cent levy generate in your district? And how many cents of levy would be required to offset the state revenue reductions that have been placed upon us? Do you know how much your salary and benefits cost each month so that you can speak to that? Or do you know what a cost is for all eligible staff to be stepped? And what about the 1% to the base on your teacher salary schedule, but also know the rest of the people too? What's 1% in your district? How much does that look like? And don't forget taxation when you're doing that, the retirement and the FICA and Medicare, dependent on their classification. You should know all your student enrollment data by class offering. And I know Jim has referenced this about digging in deeply to are we doing what we should, but have we gone above and beyond that which is required of us? And it's been nice to have, but we can't have it anymore. I worked with a superintendent for a lot of years, and he would say, we have enough resources to do anything we want, but we do not have enough resources to do everything we want. And that's our reality. So start high and continue to drill down and compare your data. I added in also that staffing comparison to your demographic peers and regional peers. That one's a little harder to get at, but it's probably worthy, at least in certain sections of your population of staff. Item 2 on the budget reduction process of the white paper is adopt a student-centered resource model. And again, that's a simple statement and it might be hard to do. You need to protect the direct classroom instruction and just evaluate all those expenditures. And it will be subjective, but see about identifying a return on investment, but also anchor down to make sure that you're following all legal or mandated requirements. But your cross-functional stakeholder groups, your internal staff, the people that are players on the team, not the community people, but they will have understanding of these programs and be able to not advocate, but help everyone else understand unintended consequences that might result in eliminating something. So again, implementing the structured reduction program, that step 1 was the low-hanging fruit, but that fruit is small compared to what you need in order to get at the enormity of this project. So yes, travel, food, supplies, and contracts, but that will not solve your problem. You have to delve into program evaluation, identify those underutilized or low impact programs, and anything that's duplicative in nature. We are so great at doing great things for kids in public education that we start things and then we might add something else that's kind of the same as that thing, or we're doing it in different buildings differently, but we never take away that original thing because it's still, valued. It just has served its useful life and it's time for it to move on. Staffing alignment, adjusting staffing based on enrollment and programming, again, digging in and looking at those class sizes. How are your schedules set up? Jim talked about that in one of his sessions, how it costs so much more dependent on how your high school structure is set up. And then organizational redesign. You may, in larger districts, you may have added positions along the way that have been certainly nice to have, but it's time to reevaluate, reprioritize, and streamline functions wherever possible. Leadership accountability, I've referred to cabinet level. And again, for some of you, that's you, and you have no one else on your team, but you have to own the reductions. That doesn't mean you do the work in isolation. You cannot do this work in isolation or you will not survive it. But eliminate protection behaviors, even if cabinet members on the team, right? And ensure that we're aligning all departments, all buildings with the district-wide priorities. You have to determine what is best for your team, for your district. You know your people. You also need to discern, can our people handle this piece of it? Sometimes our leaders would really rather be told this is how we're going to do it. You still get their feedback no matter what. But at the end of the day, the cabinet needs to make recommendation to the board. The superintendent makes recommendation to the board. Stakeholder participation, I'm circling around to remind you again, you need internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, you need diverse representation, and you need to make sure that you get that team formed quickly and make sure that your board's okay with the team you formed. I would recommend also that you avoid this becoming a board-appointed committee Let this be an administrative project. Once you anoint it as a board appointed committee, then you have to follow all those sunshine rules. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to be completely transparent and communicate this is what's going on and it's open to the public, that kind of thing. But be cautious about that. Consult your attorney to determine if that's the right space for you. So other critical success factors included in the white paper, again, the guiding principles piece, identifying the risk of inaction. Do you have a clear understanding of what is going to happen in your district if you avoid doing this work? And at what point in time, right? Effective leadership, communication strategy. I've added this slide because this is very important that we be thoughtful about what we say. And I shared with you that early on that any communication product that we pushed out or anything we said, we were very tightly aligned, and we always had our attorney review it or produce it for us. So I reached out to the attorney that we had engaged with during that time in 2008, and that was an attorney with Tuith Keeney, and I was provided a presentation that I've provided to the MASSA staff or posting on that resource page. And it really delves into the reduction in force language and when to use it, when to not, what to avoid. We were coached very clearly to not call this a RIF, not call it a reduction in force. Will that play in? Because legally it has to if you are eliminating a position of a tenured teacher, yes. But do not paint everyone with that same brush. Your probationary teachers are not protected through the RIF statute. And so refer to this as budget reductions, a position elimination due to a budget reduction connected to the financial condition of the district. So always engage with your attorney. Can't emphasize that enough. So I'll unpack now lessons learned through the budget reduction process, and I bolded urgency. You cannot start soon enough. This will take a huge lift of your people while you are opening school and running the district and all the other things that consume your lives each and every day. You must tell your story with data. Using data breaks down the not in my backyard mentality when everyone understands the depth and breadth of the services that you are offering. And learn from others who've experienced this. We have districts in our state right now that are running community budget reduction sessions. And so learn from them. And if you know better, do better. But time is your most valuable budget reduction asset. Backward plan, and that's that timeline, that checklist that helps you understand your deliverables and keep the wheels on the track. Regarding the reduction amount, you need to aim higher than you need because you will not realize it all. That became very clear. We started off with the 74 point whatever FTE, and we landed somewhere in the 67 range for our FTE reduction. Set your North Star, your guiding principles. They'll probably all look the same for all of us. And don't allow yourself to be distracted with those small ideas. 75 to 80% of the budget is people, and you have to go into it with that mindset. Be cautious of protecting all student programs and services. So yes, our guiding principle is protecting the student core, but we can't do everything. And so be very cautious, and you have to give permission to all the people around the table to throw the flag. I think we're protecting this, and maybe we shouldn't. Seek feedback from others, but at the end of the day, it's the superintendent and executives around the table that are prioritizing the reductions for recommendation to the board. But as we all know, never let a crisis go to waste. You probably have things that are being provided in your system that maybe the community loves, or the teachers love, or the students love. And you know that there are many reasons that that needs to go away. So get those things on the list. Make sure that they're represented. Again, communicate, do it all the ways, transparently, early and often. And in our district, we did allow for anonymous feedback. We set up a special email account. Now, once you start something, then you can't pull up from it very easily, but it had to be monitored, but it was a special email account where people could submit questions, and then we would produce an FAQ off of the questions where we would answer it. And then we also allow for two-way communication. Of course, that was meetings in all the buildings and meetings with department teams. Don't forget your non-cert people. Don't forget your people that are in departments and not within the buildings. But you need to stay ahead of your board and demonstrate to your board that you've got this. You are running it, you're going to make it happen, and you'll come up with a solid recommendation. Meet often with them, and that includes special meetings publicly, but it could be informational meetings where you're meeting with small groups of board members, 322 at a time, to feed them information. And again, those Q&A meetings, but understand completely that communication is not a side project. It is running simultaneously with this budget reduction project. So I added in proactively lead this, feed the bear so it doesn't come hungry. And the bear can be your people, your team, your staff members. The bear can be your board. The bear can be your community. It can be your media. So it depends on your location in which you typically deal with. So I want to tell you a little experience. People will potentially or likely be unkind, and you need to plan for that. So one of the things that was just, it caught me off guard when we were going through this process. And again, I wasn't being eliminated. And so I felt a lot of emotion through it, but I didn't understand what it was like for the people necessarily in the buildings. And we were quickly notified of staff that were becoming poachers. So you have a person that in December, January just found out that their position is being eliminated June 30, and they had people wanting stuff in their room or in their office or their supplies or whatever. And that doesn't feel good. So be prepared to navigate that kind of behavior and have your principals and department leaders ready to do that too. So each person on the team is going to be impacted through the phases of grief, shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression. And I don't know about acceptance, and maybe we never got there. Maybe people reached that point after they'd moved on and found something that served their family and them well, but it was just really a tough time. Be cautious about what you start. Don't get boxed in. And that's kind of that thing about communication and everything. Be very thoughtful before you actually start launching anything. And then that accountability piece, where if you develop the plan and you set your sight on following the plan and you commit to updating your board continually to hold you accountable, you will not fail through this process. You will keep it moving and deliver at the right time, and then continue to move on and focus on kids and delivering the instruction every single day. So I added a note here that people can handle difficult news, but what they struggle with is surprise. And I think we can all find that to be true in our lives. So lessons learned through budget reductions. When budgets are cut, people often advocate for what affects them personally. You need to expect it, but don't react to it. It's just a reality. Continuously redirect the conversation back to the guiding principles, the data, the district priorities. Lead the work with a sense of urgency and communicate consistently. And I'm wrapping up here. I know that you have to feel overwhelmed and you have to feel paralyzed and not really know where to start and what to do. And so that was the purpose of this session, was to have a plan laid out for you that you can take and make your own and work through it with your boards of education. And then you can work the plan. And that big reminder for us all, and whatever your circumstances, your bank balance is reducing daily. So keep that at the forefront of your mind as well. That concludes the presentation piece, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions?
I know I talked fast.
Carol, that was fantastic. Carol shared a lot of resources. Those will be available. Some of the spreadsheets and sample documents or PowerPoint, all those things will be on the Tight Times Tuesday webpage, along with the recording, this recording, as soon as we can get it uploaded, hopefully this afternoon. So if you want to review some of those documents, that's great. We did have a question come in on chat. You can also use your microphone if you'd like. I think we've got a small enough group here.
Yeah.
how did you deal with unions during these reductions? Any lessons learned there? So, did you have a union at the district you were at the time?
And I will tell you that we were meet and confer. And so that was not part of it, but absolutely, certainly, they should be part of your communication protocol and have opportunity for representation on that community group that you would form.
I imagine that is a whole nother lesson learned
Dynamic,
and
yes.
dynamic
Uh-huh.
that some districts face in the state.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Kelly, I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say a comment. I'm Ashley McGinnis here in St. Joseph, Missouri, and I feel like we are living through what you went through previously. So I just appreciated all of your insight and the slides and everything. It was just reassuring that we're on the right track and doing the right work. So thank you.
Perfect. It's great to be affirmed, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Well, we've got 3 more sessions for you all that can join us on Tuesdays through June. Jim will be back with us. Carol usually joins us as well, but we'll be looking forward to those. And you can review any of the ones that have taken place previously. If you want to go back and look at them, they're all on that Tight Times page on our website. So please look for those. Any other questions before we wrap up? All right, Carol, thank you very much for your
My
assistance.
pleasure.
Appreciate it. And appreciate everybody joining us. I hope you have a good June. And please reach out to our office if you have any questions.
And good luck. Best wishes.